Casio has been the powerhouse of watchmaking ever since they ventured into watches. In fact, this journey was started by four Casio brothers who started manufacturing electronic equipment and got so good at it that they pivoted into making digital watches. Little did they know what Casio was going to become in decades to come. Hey guys, I'm Siddhant and this is Yacht Watch Club, where I'm going to do a mega comparison of 4 great watches today. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and give us a shout out. I have two iconic grades today in the form of A158 and the A168 from their vintage collection. In fact, the A158 was launched in 1989 and the A168 made its way in 1995, so they are not vintage after all. And that was truly the digital era where the world had moved on from mechanical and quartz watches while Casios were deemed highly affordable. In fact, the A158 is largely based on F-91, which debuted the same year, and the A168 was largely made for the American markets, and just see how it's panned out for them. 30 years later, we are still discussing these two grades. Can you identify the major difference between A158 and A168? Till you rack your brains, I am going to declassify them bit by bit because you should know what you are getting into. Now, A158 is the one where major excitement lies, as this one reminds me of the bygone era with its retro Japanese looks. I would like to call it fair and square because the square dial is made of resin and is chrome plated with mirror finish. The dial is pretty much black on the outside with a positive digital display to carry the elements inside. Of course, this is digital greatness, as you see a lot of literature in red and yellow on the face of the dial to spare some details of the watch. The A168 is the hefty one of the lot with a larger case that's also chrome plated. However, the finishing on this one seems to be superior than the A158. In this case, the dial is slightly larger with literature in monotones, and it comparatively looks neater as there's much lesser info on the dial. This is a negative display, meaning a black silhouette of the dial may make it tough to read the time on most occasions. When put side to side, the A158 has a case diameter of 33mm and a lug-to-lug width of 36.8mm, while the A168 is 35mm in width and 39mm in lug-to-lug length. The A158 is 8.6mm thick, while the 168 is the father at 9.7mm thickness. The glass on both of them is made of resin, which had to be, making both these Casios a tough nut to crack. Both these watches are water resistant, while the rating does not matter because it is not measured, but they will take on a beating all above the rest. The caseback is made of stainless steel in both cases with the usual inscriptions on the back. However, the A168 is made in Thailand while the 158 came straight out of China. And while we are talking about the rear, what's inside the A158 is module number 593 to power this watch, while module number 3298 is housed inside A168. I chose this one in this 3-link stainless steel strap, which is pretty good in form but not so much in functionality, because the quality on this one has to be average, while this will pull your hair forever till eternity. So I got the A168 in this plastic translucent strap that's made of resin, due to which this one weighs just 25 grams, while the 158 weighs 46 grams. The bracelet here can be adjusted for sizing, while the plastic strap with a black buckle is longer than usual, so it can fit most wrists. And both these watches look absolutely tiny on my 7-inch wrist, but it just feels so great to wear them. It reminds me of the good old days. 3 buttons in total, as I'd like to call them, A, B and C. With the press of button B, you can simply toggle between various modes. First one being timekeeping, where you see the time, day and date. You can choose between a 24-hour format and set the time by toggling with A and C. Next one is the alarm window to set an alarm, while you can choose to activate it or not. Following in is the stopwatch to catch 1/100th of a second with split timer function and to capture first and second places. And finally, we have the singular piece of difference between these two watches, and that's the LED setup. The A158 has a simple micro light in the form of a green LED bulb that hardly lights up the screen. On the contrary, the A168 has an illuminator in the form of blue LED light that lights up the whole screen. And that's the real segue between these two iconic digital retro watches. And this transcends into a difference of pricing and a variety of looks between these two watches. Simply put, buy the A158 for $1695 and the A168 for $2695. The only watch that sold more than these two watches is the F-91, and that's probably because that's cheaper than both of these. We all know these Casios are on one end of the spectrum that is owned by Casio, period. At the end of the day, these watches don't need my inputs of validation because these beauties sell on their own, and that is the major differentiator for Casio. They never try to sell. Casio watches have been everyone's favorites because we have all bought it at some point in time, and that is why they instill some sense of nostalgia when you look at it. Regarding the two above, while the A158 may be the older sibling, the 168 is much more practical with the light and build. Affordability is the only call out if someone buys the 158 over the 168, but this one is definitely a better product. I would rate these two watches 9.5 out of 10, but if you ask me, I would buy the A168. Which one would you buy? Until you decide, what are you wearing today?